Sly Cooper in the Thievius Raccoonus for the PlayStation 1 has an insanely optimized any percent category, from triple jumps to dog proxies and cutscene skipping. There's a lot to learn when it comes to running this game, and despite how optimized the run is, it still has a ton of room for improvement. Just a few months ago, Sly speedrunner Gehi's set the world record for any percent, but he didn't hit certain jumps first try.
I see.
And for world record pace, he even died right during Miss Ruby's boss fight. Even with those setbacks, his dedication to running this game shone through, with a 31:36. He's just that good. But that's not why we're here today. What if we changed the run up a bit? What if, instead of going through and beating Muggshot in World 2, we hung a right as soon as we made it to the main hub for the level, entered Murray's big gamble, and did this?
I'm going to...
Welcome to Murray Must Die percent. Murray Must Die percent, or MMD percent for short, was a concept brought around when raccoon VTuber Pinch played Sly 1 for the first time. They made it to Murray's first defense mission, shot him several times for fun, and the rest is history.
You can shoot and kill Murray.
I wanted to make a run where we try to kill Murray as fast as possible. So we have our objective, but what are the rules? How do we reach Murray? At its core, the run follows the any percent rules and route for the most part, with a few exceptions. Firstly, emulators are allowed to allow the run to be more accessible to casual players. You also absolutely must watch the animated first cutscene with Sly's backstory, for reasons I'll explain in a bit. Finally, the run ends after you shoot Murray. He does this twirl, and hits the ground. Pretty straightforward. Before we continue on, I need to emphasize that I am not a full-time speedrunner. The footage you will see is not perfectly optimized, but to its credit, that's exactly what I intended for it to do. I think that even the most casual of players can speedrun this silly little category. Let's begin. A core part of the Thievius Raccoonus is the obsessive amounts of Binnocu-comm conversations with Bentley. However, runners learned very early on that the split second the binoculars appear on the screen, you can pause, reload the game, and the conversation will be treated as though you've already listened to it. Because we start the game off in a cutscene like this, the community all collectively decided that the run officially begins after we hit X at the start of the game to skip this dialogue. Don't worry though, we'll still use this trick at certain points during the run. Another big part of this game is its unspoken movement tech, in the form of slope jumping and long jumping. Slope jumping is simply the act of pushing Sly into a slope as we jump, which allows him to glide up it for more height than a normal jump would allow. Long jumping, on the other hand, is performed by pressing X to jump and holding X while we jump to preserve Sly's momentum longer than a tap would normally do. You can also do this during your double jump. Immediately after we start the run, there are actually two valid options for running this level that completely trivialize its tutorial functionality. The first of which is an insanely precise proxy to launch Sly all the way to Murray's van. A proxy is done when Sly is placed into a position where the game does not want him to be, such as in a gap just wide enough to hold him but narrows down to the point where he can't land. A fun quirk while Sly is in this state sees the game trying to do everything in its power to get Sly out of this position, even if it means breaking its own physics to do so. This particular proxy can yield some pretty crazy results, but since I didn't master it for the video, we'll be going with the other, more safe method, Death Barrier Skip. To do Death Barrier Skip, you just jump onto this antenna, then up to the corner of the roof. When Sly begins to tiptoe, signifying he's near a ledge, you perform a neutral jump, and immediately input diagonally up right until we clear the vent, at which point we shift diagonally up left while pressing X again to double jump. This jump may seem tricky at first, but with a little practice and trying to aim for this crack in the wall, you can still get this skip relatively fast. Either way, one quick run up to Murray's van and we've already completed the tutorial level. Now, in any percent, the community decided to allow runners to have a pre-made save file that has the ability to skip all cutscenes in the game. With this, anyone who starts a new file will be able to skip these animated cutscenes. However, the first cutscene is required to be watched according to the rules of the run. We do this because, in all other animated cutscenes, Sly researches and profiles each member of the Claw Gang, the main antagonist of this game as he approaches their level. And this cutscene just so happens to have
Murray, part-time driver and full-time burden.
And so, it's our mission to take Murray down. After this cutscene and a few lines of dialogue, we can enter the first level. We mash triangle to skip the cutscene, and right out of the van we have yet another proxy, but this one is way more lenient. Just get your nose stuck in around the first E and keep out, and you'll be flung up to the top of this rock and out of bounds. Skipping a Binnocu-comm conversation with Bentley. We continue to the right, jumping down and pressing circle to hook onto the rope, but before Sly fully tethers, we perform a double jump and rehook ad nauseum, promptly named a cane jump, because the cane touching the rope is all that's needed to perform the tech. Doing this is way faster than climbing up normally. Oh, and by the way, we are intentionally not picking up these bottles for an upcoming skip, aptly named triple jump. To keep it safe, casual runners would defeat this enemy first because he'll be constantly harassing us otherwise, but with enough precision, this can be skipped to save a few seconds. Alright, now time for more Sly trivia. Another strange quirk about Sly 1 is that the game slows down to a halt when pausing, rather than the game immediately freezing. The same is true when unpausing the game too, which can be easily visualized with projectiles or moving platforms. It's actually the unpausing part of this quirk that allows us to perform a triple jump, which is just as it sounds. We first set up this trick by ledge hanging on this frog statue and line our camera up with this brick texture here. From this point, we jump towards the brick, hit square to swing our cane, and immediately pausing after we do so. If our angle is good, we should now be able to press X to close the menu, begin holding forward, and hit X 2 more times, which will give us 2 normal jumps instead of a double jump. Finally, at the apex of our jump, we will hit X again to finish off with a double jump, which should just barely give us enough height to ledge grab this platform and get out of bounds. Oh, and the reason why we don't grab the bottles up until this point is because Bentley starts a dialogue with us explaining how we need to collect the bottles to open a safe in this level. However, when a dialogue like this is occurring, the game will immediately pause and unpause instead of ramping up or down, making this trick impossible. But there is a window after we collect this bottle where Bentley doesn't begin his dialogue, so we use this time to perform the triple jump as fast as we can. This is what it looks like in one smooth motion. All that's left to do is head along this specific path on the top of the rocks, jump over this wall, and then make our way past a gate that has another Binnocu-comm cutscene, which, for triple jump skip, we skip 2 of. The last part of this run-up is pretty linear, but we can still optimize our route by jumping on these spinning wheels so we don't have to wait for their cycles. Keep in mind though, the collision box on these walls are pretty finicky, so in a more casual run you would be better off waiting. This run-up is pretty long, so I'm going to take this opportunity to thank you for watching up until this point. If you would like to see more content like this, please let me know. I would love to cover the full speedrun for this game eventually. We end this area by collecting the only key needed for the run, and make our way to the main hub for World 1. The second we have control over Sly, we can pause and reload our game so that it puts us in the respawn point of the hub. This skips a long walk up and another Binnocu-comm cutscene. Before the screen wipe has finished, we want to immediately run diagonally up right to catch a good cycle on the guard on the roof up here. You can actually jump up on the lamp here, and from the lamp up to save a bit of climbing, which brings us to the first part of World 1 Skip, which, as it suggests, skips all of World 1's levels and brings us straight to Raleigh, the boss of this world. We start off with what is referred to as a Booger Jump, aptly named because we jump off of the booger projectile that this squid guard fires at us. We start by approaching the middle alcove, and we let the guard see us so we can grab its aggro. Once he rounds the corner, we will push into the wall and double jump to slope jump over the partition, and the guard will stupidly try to shoot us through the wall. We will keep running into this corner until he rounds this bend again, but instead of jumping back, we need to intentionally wait for him to get close enough to shoot us again. When he is positioned here, we are going to use a long jump tech mentioned at the start of the video, as well as a slope jump to gain the most height possible. If we time it right, the guard will shoot a booger just beneath Sly, the splash of which will give him stable ground for a moment in order for him to long double jump again and clear the wall. Now, I know that was a lot, but trust me when I say, this is one of the easier tricks to perform in the run. Altogether, the movement looks something like this. Now that our feet are all snotty on the other side of the wall, we can jump up on an invisible wall and over onto the second part of the hub, which skips 3 levels for keys, as well as several Binnocu-comm conversations with Bentley. Once we make our way over to the cannon, we can begin the second part of World 1 Skip, super jumping. We begin by positioning Sly at this corner of the cannon, and jump with a wide berth over to the right to avoid the key insertion cutscene trigger. Right before we hit the ground again, we will hit square to swing our cane, and X to jump again. If you time it right, you'll notice that Sly doesn't produce any dust particles when he hits the ground. The game actually uses these particles as a means to signify to the player that Sly has touched the ground. He will return to the spot if you fall off with a lucky charm or get stuck. But by delaying our landing by swinging, we don't generate dust particles as we land, and thus don't update the safe position for Sly to return to. Theoretically, we can do this as long as we want, but we will instead opt to jump over to the bridge and wedge Sly in between the bridge and these barrels. And, unlike a proxy that doesn't like Sly being in a gap we can't fit in and physics go crazy, a super jump is abusing the failsafe in place to prevent Sly from being fully stuck. The real kicker, however, is that it also has the properties of breaking the game's physics, and clipping Sly into the cannon, which has its activation zone always on, allowing us to skip 4 more levels and sending us straight to Raleigh's boss fight. Here's the full trick and play. And much like Booger Jump, this sounds far more intimidating than it actually is. It took me around 10 practice attempts before I got it down. With just this boss fight left, we can actually abuse the autosave feature by resetting the console or emulator right when we see this icon. It may seem like this will waste time, but from the moment the level loads all the way till Raleigh's dialogue ends, it takes 54 seconds, whereas resetting only takes around 18 seconds. Huge. It's for resets like this, however, that emulators are unable to claim first place in any percent over consoles, because even an average PC would load the game faster than a PS2 or PS3 could ever dream of. Raleigh as a boss fight is pretty straightforward. He has 4 phases, and in the first 3 he jumps 5 times before becoming vulnerable. There is a slight time save in each phase by waiting for him to attempt to jump back to safety before hitting him, which skips his drowning animation. Oh yeah, and for reference, we've hit Raleigh twice before that other cutscene would have ended. The last phase is where things get crazy though, and after we evade Raleigh 6 times, I'll pause and walk you through how runners skip Raleigh's post-fight dialogue and animated cutscenes. If you remember from earlier, we determined from triple jump skip that pausing and unpausing the game both slows down to a halt and ramps up to a start respectively, and we can abuse the slowdown here to swing at Raleigh while he's vulnerable and pause. Because the autosave icon pops up here, the game considers Raleigh defeated, meaning we can return to the hideout and immediately proceed to the next level. Keep in mind that this works even if you don't hit Raleigh before the pause takes effect, because even while the level's loading, Sly is still actionable, and it will still count the hit of Raleigh even when we're menuing like this. We mash through Muggshot's animated cutscene and proceed with the run-up. We abuse the level geometry to skip some climbing sections, and get ready to perform the hardest trick in MMD %, Cleetus skip, or dog proxy. Up ahead is a dog enemy tied to a pole, which becomes active when Sly is within a certain radius. The final and most important quirk of this game is that unlike many other games, the enemies in Sly Cooper don't have a damaging hitbox when they aren't attacking. After the dog hits the pole, there's a window where he can't damage us, but will still rotate towards us as he winds up for his next attack. We start by positioning Sly on the center point where these rocks meet, and then jump with a neutral stick input, only tapping left on the D-pad once to move Sly over 1 step. We then line up our camera until this bush is centered on the screen. At this point, Cleetus begins to wind up his attack by first barking and then charging. When he barks, he is locked into Sly's current position, so we'll take this opportunity to run forwards with the D-pad slightly, and then long double jump to a stop right around here. It's important that we wait until Cleetus has almost hit the pole before moving again, otherwise we'll run into his still active hurt box and perish. Once he does so, we hold diagonally upright with the D-pad straight into the pole, and without stopping, we wait for a visual cue to shift this run into an upwards D-pad input. This is usually halfway through him shaking his head. If done too early, Sly won't get any height at all and drown in the lake to the left. And if done too late, Sly will launch so fast and far that we will be flung out of bounds and Sly will fall to his death. But if you do it just right... After this launch, we kill this enemy here to set up for the second hardest trick in the run, Vault Skip. We'll be abusing the janky collision in this corner to the left of the vault, and begin by lining up this gray texture on the right to where we barely can't see it anymore. Once we have this, we'll neutral jump, then at the apex of the jump, hold forward on the D-pad, and right as we hit the ground and we see the dust kick up, we jump again. Doing this clips us through the locked vault, saving us from having to watch the lengthy key animation. Though, if you mess this up, you can actually fall underneath the vault and completely soft lock yourself, which is usually the run killer. When we land, we can immediately reload the level, and then reload again once the Binnocu-comm pops up to skip Bentley's dialogue. From here, we double jump over this guard's light and kill him, but instead of running left like any percent does for World 2 skip, we run to the right to enter Murray's big gamble. All that's left is to reload our save to skip the last Binnocu-comm conversation with Bentley, perfectly time our shots, and... Just like that, the run is over. We've defeated the liability of the team for the greater good, and Utah is safe from the clutches of Murray. If you've made it this far into the video, I appreciate you for joining me on the silly adventure I created. Since I don't have a lot of time to stream and effectively practice for full speedruns, creating a short run like this was a ton of fun. On top of getting my fastest time of 10:12, we killed Murray a total of 51 times, and also raised $115 for the Extra Life charity. All this is to say, I encourage you to give this run a try, and let me know if you can beat my time. Seriously, this run is not that hard to learn. I think anybody can give it a shot. The thumbnail for this video was made by Winry Loveday. I'll have their information in the description. Someday I'll tackle a full run of this game, and make a full speedrun history for it as well. If something like that interests you, let me know in the comments below. And since this is my first official video, I don't have much in the way of content to direct you to yet, but I do plan on releasing a video at the beginning of every month, so if you want to see more videos like this, make sure you subscribe. Otherwise, you'll find me on Twitch, @LootVT, routing a new category for a Windbreaker run. Getting that jump is a little finicky. Oh no. Take it easy, and I'll see you in the next video.